Good afternoon, everyone. We'll get going in just a second. Let's give folks a couple more minutes to see if we can get some other members here. All right, are we good to roll, everyone? Aaron?
Yep.
Staff? Okay, yep. Excellent. Well, I'd like to call to order today's May 18th meeting of TPCC. Thank you all for joining us today. We will begin with roll call here in just a minute, but for folks joining us who might not be regulars here, of which there might not be any in this category, but if at any point that it's appropriate for public comment or comment on an item and you are dialing in from your computer, feel free to use the raise hand function and I will call on you in the order in which you have raised your hand. And I think without further ado, let's just run through the list here of members of the committee. I am Dave Strohmeyer, chair of the TPCC this year. Is there anyone from the city of Missoula here? Mierta, I'm not, there you are. Mierta Becerra, for the record.
Present.
Excellent. And I am not seeing Mayor Engen. Are you out there or do you have a proxy? Okay. Don MacArthur.
Present, Missoula Urban Transportation District.
Excellent. And Ryan, I'm assuming you are proxy today for FHWA?
Indeed, I am.
Okay. I do not see Commissioner Slotnick. Are you out there? No. Who is with MD Montana Department of Transportation today? Would that be you, Ben?
Yep, it's me today. I'm sitting in for Bob Bozen, Ben Nunnally, MDT, Missoula District.
Thank you. And Shane Morrissey.
Present.
Okay. And you are representing the planning board, correct? Okay. Debbie Johnston.
Present, Missoula City County Air Pollution Control Board.
Great. Thank you all. We do have a quorum, thankfully. So let's move on to approval of minutes. These would be minutes for April 20th, our meeting last month. Are there any corrections or additions to those minutes? Okay, seeing none, they will stand approved as presented. Is there any public comment on items not on today's agenda? All right, we are moving right along. So let's just dive into our new business items. And in the continuing saga of the long-range transportation plan, we have a bit of an update. And this is brought to us by Aaron Wilson and Jennifer with Nelson Nygaard.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. Well, as Dave mentioned, we are nearing the end of this long effort. It seems like we've had very regular updates, which we haven't always had the opportunity to have our consultants and do sort of regular updates like this. But it's maybe as I said, the silver lining to COVID is that we can have virtual and sort of bring people in from wherever they are. So this presentation is, I guess, what hopefully all of us have been working and waiting for. I'm definitely excited to have the draft plan out, and Jennifer and her team have done a really fantastic job pulling all of the work together into a plan that I think is laid out really well and is organized and clearly illustrates what we're working towards. And is maybe more accessible as a plan by virtue of it not being 500 pages of words. So I think all of that took a lot of work, and we're excited to walk you through. And so I think I'll turn it over to Jennifer to maybe get us started. But basically our agenda today is to sort of walk through the draft plan. Some of this will be very familiar to all of you, things that we've worked on and talked about, but just to give you an overview, and then have some time for discussion if you have any initial thoughts or feedback as we take our public comment and then work on a final draft to bring back to you for adoption in June. So this is sort of the opportunity to think about what comments you might have now and getting this plan really dialed in for that adoption. So I guess
Thanks.
that's enough words from me. I'll turn it over to you, Jennifer.
Jennifer.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. And thanks, Dave. Dave, even though it has been a long and ongoing saga, hopefully it has been a low drama saga, which is always a good thing for a policy committee, right?
It's been an enjoyable journey.
Well, great. Well, I am excited that we're at this point and have the opportunity to just quickly walk through the contents of the draft plan. As Aaron mentioned, we'll keep the presentation really short for today so that we can dig into any areas of the plan where you've got comments or questions or want to hear a little bit more. So I'll just do a quick overview to get us started. We, rather than just showing you the table of contents for the plan, which you can certainly read yourselves, we did a quick draft plan by the numbers, just to give you a sense of all the different elements that are included in Missoula Connect. And our hope is that because we've been working together over the last 14 or 15 months of this project, that 99% of what you see in the draft plan feels familiar and reflects your input, most importantly. So in the plan itself, we have 10 chapters as well as a conclusion. We didn't count the appendices, but there are currently 10, and I think will be 11 by the time we're done. And so for those folks who really want to dig into the technical details of the scenario analysis, of the revenue projections, more details about the projects, all of that lives in the appendices. But we did try and keep the body of the plan relatively short, even though it is 10 chapters, and really hit the high points of each of the key things that people need to know. The 5 goals that you helped us shape last summer carry through the entire plan, including all the way into the near-term recommendations. You're very familiar with the evaluation framework that we've been working through, as well as the scenarios that we shaped together at the latter part of 2020, and then the analysis metrics that we use to get to our recommended list of projects. So in total, that recommended list of projects is 71 capital projects, and there are another 100 or so that are part of the illustrative list. So there's a really good set of projects that are included in the plan as a whole. And again, we've got that flexibility to move between recommended and illustrative and vice versa as needed. The programs and policies that we've spent a little bit of time working with you all on are captured in another chapter, and we do have about 27 of those, which cover a range of different topics, but again, are really focused on ways that the region, the city, the county, key partners can help to amplify the capital projects and really advance toward the region's adopted mode split goals. We also have performance measures included, and so these are going to feel somewhat familiar to you because they do tie to the evaluation framework. They are grounded in the 5 project goals, but we've established 28 measures that can be used to help understand the progress that you're making as you implement Missoula Connect. And then the 12 near-term actions, these are in Chapter 10, and these are a place where we're really going to look for some feedback from the committee, because what we pulled out in those 12 near-term actions are things that over the next 2 to 3 years, you as a region could be moving forward. Again, partnerships are needed. There are opportunities for different funding sources that will have to be pursued. But those 12 near-term actions could do a lot to start continuing to move the dial on the mode split goals and really advancing the plan outcomes. So those are some of the key elements that you'll see as you review. The first 5 chapters of the plan are really setting the stage. And so this is where we're kind of framing up the reason for the long range plan. We talk a little bit about some of the existing conditions, and then also what changed over the course of 2020 due to COVID, due to increases in housing costs in the region. So that is all included as part of the Strong Foundation chapter. We've shared some highlights of the community input that we heard over the course of the plan. Again, we were limited to just the one public event, but did hear from thousands of folks across the region over the course of online surveys, some paper surveys and materials that were distributed, virtual meetings, interactive maps, a whole host of different ways for people to provide input. The goals, again, that's a short chapter and one that will feel really familiar. And then the scenarios are captured in the Shaping the Future chapter, which is chapter 5. And that is really the way to introduce people to how we got to the recommended projects. So I'll hit on chapters 6 through 10 in just a little bit more detail, since those are the kind of the second half of the plan and the place where we do get into all of the recommendations. You're very familiar with the projects that are included in the recommended list, but for those who aren't, we've broken them down into 6 different types. And when we think about these different project types, one of the things that's really important is that even though there are projects that are complete streets, that are active transportation, that are roadway extensions, all of the projects that are part of the recommended list, the recommended plan, really do serve people traveling by all modes. So when we talk about a complete streets project, that is improvements for people walking, biking, driving, operating freight vehicles, and taking transit. When we think about providing space for people who are walking, rolling, and biking, that helps to free roadway space for people traveling by other modes. And then the key connections that are part of roadway extensions and bridge improvements, again, are all about making the network and the system as a whole really work. So we used these different designations to help folks kind of pick out different types of projects, and also to recognize that for some funding sources, it's going to be easier to use them for one type of project versus another. But the intent is not to draw modal distinctions. Really, we want to stress that this is a multimodal plan. So of the 71 projects that are part of the recommended scenario, you can see the breakdown in terms of project type here. Again, I do want to stress that what we are focused on in thinking about those 71 projects is the system as a whole, and how those projects work together to improve outcomes and help to advance the region's goals and mode split targets. Those 71 projects are programmed across 3 time periods. And so those are the first 5 years, the next 10 years, and then the following 15 years after that. And that's how you'll see the projects presented in the body of the plan, is according to those time periods. This is just the near-term projects. I think we looked at this in a slightly different format in our last meeting together. We do have, again, when you think about those different time periods, they have certain amounts of money that are attached to them based on what we expect to be reasonably available in terms of discretionary funds for the MPO to help allocate. So because there are a good number of committed projects, which are at least partially funded by other sources already or through past federal allocations, there are about 22 projects that are part of the near term. And so that's, again, the first 5 years. A couple of the signature projects that are included there, of course, completing some of the big investments already underway with Russell Street and the build grant commitments, and then the ability to help advance the Front Main two-way conversion and the South Avenue Complete Street. In the near term, we did try and focus on projects that have to be completed within a time period because, for example, there are MRA dollars to spend or there's another funding source. But those, again, are a couple of projects that scored really, really high and are very important from a regional perspective. And then there are a good number of neighborhood greenways included in the near term, again, to help use up the rest of the funding that we expect to be available, but also to help build out key connections and the network. Erin, anything you want to add about projects before I keep going?
I don't think so. I think this section of the plan should be very familiar to all of you at this point. We've spent a lot of time talking about the projects and scenarios and how we landed on the recommended list. And so there were not substantial changes other than the allocating projects to those specific timeframes. So hopefully this is all very familiar territory for all of you.
And let the record show that Commissioner Slotnick has joined us.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Great.
Jennifer, back to you.
Okay, so the last thing I'll mention before we leave projects is just a feature that you will find in the plan. There are a number of spotlights that are identified both in the project section, and you'll also see this in Chapter 7 with the programs and policies. And the intent of these spotlights is not just to highlight things that are near term or that are committed projects, but really to focus in areas like what we're showing here, the Reserve Street area projects, where there are a lot of both recommended and then also some illustrative projects that potentially come together. It's one thing to look at one project at a time or one project in a time period versus looking at kind of the universe of what change looks like in a particular area. So that's what we tried to do through the spotlights. You can see the designation in terms of project type, the phase of the projects that are shown, and in some cases, when it's one or two projects, we've also highlighted the cost. So that's a helpful way for people to learn a little bit more about some of the signature projects. Chapter 7 then focuses on the recommended programs and policies. And so again, these are our supports for many of the capital projects that are identified that often focus on behavior change, that help to focus on education and encouragement, and then also help to take advantage of a lot of the programs and policies that are already underway. So you will see a mix of programs and policies that are identified as existing. We've tried to suggest when there are additions that could be made to the program or to the policy that the city or county or the region is already pursuing. For each of these, you'll find that there's a very short description, some rationale for why it is included in the plan, an immediate step or a first step that could be taken when there is capacity to do so, and then a key partner or two. And then the priority is really, again, that same time frame that we looked at with the project. So thinking about near term, medium term, and long term. It's important to note that the recommended programs and policies are not fiscally constrained in the same way that the recommended projects are. So there is programmatic funding that we've identified through the long range plan, but certainly not enough to be able to fully advance the programs and policies. So that's an important piece to keep in mind. Again, as I mentioned, we have spotlights for the programs and policies as well. In many cases, rather than focusing just on a particular program or policy, what we tried to do is bring together a variety of elements. And so, this particular spotlight that I'm showing is the idea of compact growth and really that connection between land use and transportation that's been an important part of our work on the long range plan, but is not fully within the sphere of influence of a long range transportation plan. So then we come to money, and we had a great conversation about this at our last TPCC meeting. Nothing has changed in terms of the overall picture of funding, with the exception that we do now know that the local option fuel tax is no longer an option. We'd already assumed that that would be the case for the last set of numbers that we talked with you about. And again, that was just to be as conservative as possible. So what you can see here is that the 71 projects that are included in the recommended list are about $208.3 million, and that is of the discretionary funds that are available. So we do provide a breakdown by project type. Again, this is a place where I want to stress that, even though we're saying that 20% of the discretionary funds are going toward active transportation projects, that number, if we look at the full amount of funding that is available in the region, goes down to something like 2 or 3%. And so this pie chart is just giving you the picture of the discretionary funds. And then again, this is, I think, an important place to remind everybody that when we talk about projects and who they are serving, this is a multimodal plan, and we really do see benefits for all of these project types for people using all modes of transportation. I mentioned that there is a little bit of discretionary funding allocated toward programs, and that is just about 2.4 million of the 210-ish million that's available. So a pretty small percentage, but that is consistent with how you've traditionally programmed your discretionary funds. And then the last two pieces I'll mention, so Chapter 9 focuses on the performance measures. And this is a place where we have, again, maintained the mode split goals that were part of the 2016 plan in keeping with direction from this body and our Transportation Technical Advisory Committee. And then we have established for each of the goals a handful of measures that, again, tie back to the evaluation criteria, tie back to the objectives, and then specific metrics that we recommend be tracked to help understand the progress that you as a region are making. And so those metrics range from counting the number of things that are done or built to also really thinking about the ways that you are increasing access for people. So how are we increasing access to jobs, to schools, to neighborhood centers? How are we better connecting our neighborhoods where people might be lower income or have a greater need for transit or active transportation projects? And rather than set specific numeric targets, we've just indicated a trajectory for each of the measures. So we want to be increasing the number of projects that are within a 15-minute walk or bike ride to schools, job centers, et cetera, as an example. The measures do go beyond what is federally required. And I think that's important because your goals also go beyond what is federally required. They are consistent, and across the plan, you will see that some of the metrics have a little federal highways symbol, and those indicate the metrics that are most tied to the federal requirements. So you are in compliance in terms of what you're measuring, but do have the ability to go beyond. And again, we tried to focus on data that would be pretty readily available, so it's not a heavy lift to monitor performance. And then the last chapter, chapter 10, is one where we've got our 12 key priority actions identified. And again, these are actions that, because we're calling them near-term priorities, we're saying the next 2 to 3 years are really the ideal time to be moving some of these forward. They, in most cases, build on work that you already have underway, whether that is the efforts through the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority to advocate for bringing passenger rail back to the region, or whether it is thinking about ways that you can really build on the transit amenities program that Mountain Line has, and think about working together to develop some mobility hubs, ways that you create those combinations of those connection points between different modes of transportation and provide supportive amenities to make it easy for people to really use different modes of transportation. We wove in the MDT and Mountain Line priorities here as well, and just a couple of those, but this is a section that is kind of a nice roadmap for a few of the near-term actions. So that's the very quick overview of what's included. Again, we are in our public comment period right now, and I'll let Aaron give an overview of how we are approaching that and the tools that people can use, and then moving toward a final revised plan that we'll bring to you in June. So
Yeah,
I'll
thanks.
stop sharing and let you take it over, Aaron.
Yeah, so we're in, I guess technically the final week of our public comment period. So we started at the beginning of May. We released the draft plan. I think actually technically it was the last day of April. And so we've had about 3 weeks for public comment. We've been sending out notices and sharing on social media and reaching out to our committees and trying to get comments, and we're using a new tool. I will share my screen for this, just a demo, to try to make it easy to comment on the draft plan. I think one of the things we've always maybe struggled with a little bit is that you send out this draft plan and people read it, and then you're just getting emails or references. And so there's a new, as always, lots of new virtual tools for making these things easier. So on our project website, we have a couple just basic information about the draft plan, and you can download a printer-friendly or PDF version if you're old school. Sometimes I like to see a print version. You notice things that you wouldn't on a screen. So it's nice to have that, I guess, analog option. But then we also have this new tool that's embedded in the website, which is essentially a PDF viewer that allows you to comment directly onto the plan. And so people don't have to leave the website. They don't have to download anything. And there are some unique tools associated with this that help us sort of guide people through the plan. So one of the things that we can do with this tool is create a guided tour of the plan. And so these are just boxes that give a little bit of detail on what the plan is, or just sort of walks people through different sections and key things that we want people to look for and pay attention to, which is another way to sort of make this easier on the public for providing comments. It also has the ability to add videos. So we have our intro video from early on in the process about what the long range plan is. We have a video about what the MPO is and what our role. There's an interactive map, so that pops up a map of all of our recommended projects. So you don't just have the static paper map. People can go in and explore, and it's sort of all contained here in this one tool. And then there's a table of contents that allows you to go to whichever chapter. So these are linked. So if you want to start at chapter 1, you can go directly there, start reading. Or if you want to just really look at the programs and policies, you can go right there, and it's really easy to find it and navigate the document. So in that sense, it's really easy to navigate and guide people through the draft plan. And then the other great part about it is to leave a comment. You just click on the document, you put in some basic information, add your comment. We have different comment types that you can leave. So if people have ideas, suggestions, typos, which we're going to assume there are none of those, but I'm sure there will be at least one or two, or questions. If people have a question about something in the document, they can leave that there, and we can go in and answer that directly on there as sort of the official MPO response to that question. So if it's a lot of different ways that people can sort of categorize their comments, that makes it easy for us to sift through that. And then that's really all it is. You add the comment, and then it's there for basically everyone to see. So it's very similar to the interactive maps that we've used, like Wiki Maps or Social Pinpoint, where the public is commenting together and really providing that feedback. And the other nice thing is you can go in, so you can see other people's ideas. You can vote up or down, or you can reply to those comments, so people can have a little bit of a dialogue, or you can see if there is a comment and someone really agrees with it, or maybe they disagree for a particular reason. We can organize those comments here and sort of have it be very transparent what people are saying.
Aaron, as far as the committee members here today reviewing and commenting on the plan, I'm assuming you'd like us to use this tool also, or is that, or not?
I think you could go either way. It's just as easy. I think for our committees, some of the committees or agency staff, like city long range planning, for instance, will be sending us all their comments at once in one sort of compiled, which is sometimes easier for a group like that who are trying to get all of their comments in order and have the time to review that. But I think for all of you, if you want to provide comments this way, or if you would rather them be an email to us, that would be just fine.
Okay.
And like I said, there is a link here for a PDF version if you do want to download it. As much as I hate to say this, if you really want to download a hard copy and drop off those comments at my desk, where we can sift through those as well. If you really want to go the pen and paper method for providing, or sticky notes. Sticky notes are also.
Aaron, how many pages is this document?
It's it's 144 pages. we have it laid out here in this tool as sort of 2-page spread. So that's the other nice thing about this is that this will eventually be 2 pages. So for example, this will have a map on 1 page and the projects on a facing. And we're presenting it as sort of that 2-page spread. So it's about 74 pages as a, front and or facing page spread, if that makes
Do you
sense.
have any copies printed off?
We don't, but if you do want to, I'll print a copy for you, Josh, if you.
If you wouldn't mind, I promise I'll send you comments. I won't do anything hard copy, but something this big is kind of nice to look through.
Yeah, let's touch base after this and figure out.
I can share with Dave if he wants to look at it.
Yeah.
Josh prefers it printed on parchment.
We can hand draw it for you, Josh.
There you go. That's good.
So yeah, that is, I will stop sharing here. So that's how we have it laid out. And like I said, Friday is technically our end of public comments, but we will be bringing this back through TTAC and TPCC in June. We're hoping to have all of the comments or the substantive comments by Friday so that we can, Jennifer and her team have time to make those edits and then we can get it to TTAC with some time to review.
All right. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Jennifer. Questions, comments from the committee? We really appreciate all of the hard work that has gone into this. It looks like it's going to be a solid piece of work. Anything else? Folks just want to get out of this meeting so that they can print the thing off and start reviewing it between now and Friday. Okay.
We'll need to plant a few trees to make up for all the paper.
We'll share that 1 copy.
Okay. Thanks, Jennifer.
Great.
Thanks, Aaron. Oh, Don.
Well, I just wanted to follow up on some of our earlier conversations. We had various strategies about the sort of direction for this plan. And I forget, there were like 3 scenarios that we were evaluating. And I just wanted to understand how that's been woven in and what does this represent out of those 3 scenarios?
Sure. So you will find this described a little bit at the end of chapter 5 and as you move into chapter 6, but the recommended list of projects is a combination of the 3 scenarios that we looked at in late 2020 and into the early part of 2021. The feedback that we received through engagement on those 3 scenarios was that there was a really strong interest from folks in the regional equity and the enhanced connections scenario, with a few projects from the new connection scenario that really jumped out for folks. And so as we combined scenarios to create that recommended list, we did bring in all of the projects that had been included in both enhanced connections and regional equity, and then brought in some of those signature projects as well from new connections and each of the other scenarios. So you'll find at the end of chapter 6, there is a quick look at how the recommended scenario performs against the 15 metrics that we used for the scenario analysis, but it really is a blended scenario. We did also look at both the business as usual growth as well as strategic growth from a land use standpoint when we evaluated the scenarios. And the long range transportation plan doesn't get to make a recommendation around a growth scenario for the region, but we did talk specifically about the value of compact growth and the fact that the strategic growth scenario does more to help achieve your transportation goals than business as usual. So our final list of projects is a great blend of the scenarios that we looked at before. We think that the combination of projects does the most to move toward the goals that you've set, rather than going with one of those scenarios versus another.
That was perfect answer. It's kind of makes a lot of sense. And I guess the question really was maybe as we evaluate new projects or opportunities, whether there is is there a roadmap that this plan sort of establishes about how we evaluate them? And maybe what I heard is, yes, there's the 15 measures to evaluate, and yes, we are still going to be sort of ad hocing it a bit to see how it matches up to our overall, the overall goals of the community.
You're right, Don, that the 15 measures are a great tool. Also, each of the projects included in the plan, both in the recommended list and the illustrative list, was scored across 30 some criteria. That's all included in an appendix of the plan as well. And so that's another way that if you've got new project ideas that emerge, you can use that more detailed scoring rubric that we set out in the evaluation framework.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks, Dawn. Thanks, Jennifer. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Again, thanks, Jennifer, for all of your work, and we will see what the next step is post the end of the comment period here.
Sounds good. Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, next we have a presentation from Mr. TMA and Lynn Heligard. Lynn.
How are you?
Very good. Welcome.
And I know Aaron's got that, and I'm trying to, I've never had to share a presentation on Zoom before, so I'm kind of struggling here.
There should be a green button, Lynn, down at the bottom that says share.
Ah, okay. There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you. I learned something new today. I can go home now.
Okay, we can see it, Lynn.
All right, excellent. Let's see. There we go. So anyway, this is Mr. TMA's mission statement. And I would like to thank TPCC. It's strange to think that Mr. TMA is celebrating their 25th year this year of running Vanpools and providing service to Missoula. We certainly could have reached that level of success without the support of TPCC. So I want to let you guys know how grateful we are for all that support. Just a little history on the Vanpool, and you can see that Vanpoolers are very engaging, creative people. Vanpooling actually started about 40 years ago. It's a strategy that employers used to address the oil embargo that was going on then. Mr. TMA started in 1996, and it was a result of the expansion of Highway 93. And this was public, supported by the public as a way to maybe stop future expansions on that road. We started with an old van that Mountain Line gave us. And then in 2000, we received a $750,000 earmark from Senator Burns that we used to switch from leasing our vehicles to purchasing them. We also used the remainder of those funds to partner with the university, the city, to build the transfer center at Lewis and Clark housing development. The lady that you see right here, her name is Amy Heller. Amy Heller was our very first driver. She drove that van that Mountain Line gave us, and she drove up into a route for us up until last year. When COVID hit, she decided to retire. So we were very grateful for Amy. She also served on our board. Some of the other programs that Mr. TMA has been engaged in is we have the Canvas program that stands for Community Needs Van Service. We partnered with Stack to develop that program, trying to address the needs of kind of a niche in Missoula where they could, because of physical limitations, they couldn't access the fixed routes, but they weren't disabled enough that they could qualify for the paratransit service. So we used the vans that we had sitting on parking lots all over town to provide that service. At one point, Community Medical Center came on when we started needing lifts because we contract that service out, which FTA allows us to do. So Community Medical Center started supplying us with their buses. They maintained them. They also helped us provide the match for one of the full-time drivers that we hired out of their program. And in all of this, I worked with a friend of mine that had a software company, and we developed a software that we could all use to look at each other's schedules. So if our Canvas program could get a senior from A to B, we could look at Mountain Line's schedule to see if their service couldn't get them from B back to A. Or so the 4 years that that program was in operation, we provided 1,500 rides that would have been denials otherwise. We also had a school outreach program. We hired teachers to do that for us and develop the curriculum. It was K through 12. Very interactive. They did plays. They even had one for the government classes where they were on city council and they had to make decisions on subdivisions, you know, deciding how to fix the transportation into that. Science classes on inversion, that sort of thing. At one point, we proposed doing a hybrid of the slug lines that they have back in Washington, D.C. And basically how those are is you've got your park and ride and you set it up in zones so that all the people that are going downtown would either park in this zone if they wanted a ride, or they'd just pull in, and then all the people would jump in that car knowing that they were going downtown. We were working with Alien Technology out of North Dakota State. They were looking for somebody to beta test their software that the military wanted to be able to inventory trucks as they went over readers in the street. The FTA R&D was interested in that as well. MDT wasn't real supportive of that program. We were trying to solve two problems. One, the 36,000 cars that were coming in from the Bitterroot every day, and the fact that MDT just really didn't have the ability to provide us with vehicles. The ones we had were getting really old and having a lot of mechanical problems. And the other things, when we did, after we finished the Lewis and Clark development, we worked with the university to help them secure Mackey money from the state to extend the bike trails over the Madison Street underbridge and connect the UM and other places. The other things we do in our spare time is we've been involved in 7 state transportation studies, 25 national studies, and 15 national training sessions. Those national studies are run either through what they call the Transit Cooperative Research Program or the Highway Cooperative Research Program, run out of the National Academies of Science. And what that does for Montana is it allows us to get studies done. And these studies are very robust. The Institute hires the consultants and they pay 100%. So we've had many studies done that cost anywhere from $250,000 to $500,000 that we just really couldn't afford here. In 2000, when I took over as the executive director, we had 6 routes, and before COVID hit, we had 20 routes running. And these are kind of some ridership numbers, the number of work sites that we serve, trips saved, that kind of thing. And you can see the when COVID hit about April, the major hit that the program took with the stay-at-home orders that the governor issued. And you can see we're kind of starting to come back a little bit. Every day we get a few more people wanting to join back up and start their old routes. I'm really not anticipating it just booming right back probably until the fall. FTA just issued a statement saying that they're extending the mask mandate, TSA, public transportation, all of that until September 13th. So I think that might have an impact. We also saw a lot of our longtime riders decide to just retire or figure out how they could telecommute for most of the time. And kind of because of COVID, we were able to improve our technology. So we're installing readers that will track our riders. So rather than having to book things pen and paper, they now can do it with an RFID card that we'll issue them, or they can log on their smartphones. The other reason for doing this is we felt that it would also limit our staff's exposure, going out and having to pick up the schedules, be more efficient, not having to spend that time driving around to all the vans picking it up. And we have, during that time, we did start a new route for Designs for Health up in Arlee. We expect the route from Stevensville to Montauk to start here pretty soon. And we're working on getting the routes for the people that live up Miller Creek that work at GlaxoSmithKline going again. So I thought it might be interesting when I was asked to do this, to try and tie this to the new long-range transportation plan goals. So addressing the safety, as you can see from this chart, vanpooling is one of the safest public transportation systems that you can ride. Our policy with MDT is to replace our vehicles 7 years or 100,000 miles is the useful life. Mr. TMA does all the preventive maintenance, which is unusual among van pools. Typically, they require the drivers to take care of that. We also have installed trackers so that we can track when the maintenance is due based on the mileage. And we do that on the manufacturer's recommendations. All of our drivers are volunteer, so that helps us cut down on the cost. If we had to pay our drivers, it would probably add another $150,000 to the program to do that. So if you want to be a driver, you have to have a valid driver's license. You have to be 25 years of age or older, unless you possess a CDL. So like the drivers that drive for we've had a couple of them drive for us because they've got their CDLs, so the insurance company will make an exception. They have to have a clean driving record. Those monitors also track hard turns, speeds, hard braking. So if we see a driver doing erratic driving, we get a hold of them and send them some training videos. And then efficiency, probably the easiest way to describe the efficiency of it, the vans run when and where the riders need them to. So typically they come in once in the morning and go back out once at night. As we said, the volunteer drivers cut down on the cost. Our fares cover about 20% of the expenses. We found that if we set them up so they have either 3 pickups and 4 drop-offs or vice versa, that those routes seem to attract the most riders because they're not taking a lot more time than what it is to just drive in your car alone. However, we have set up express routes that route to Montauk. That one's what we call an express route. They all meet at Stevensville and they drive to Montauk. So that one's as fast as driving a car by yourself. Let's see. So on sustainability and impact to the climate, since the inception when we started running the Vanpool program, these are the numbers that we've racked up. So like for Designs for Health, if they get into the carbon credits and that kind of stuff, we track that. So we can give that business the numbers of emissions that they've reduced, the miles they haven't traveled to earn carbon credits for them. The other thing that we've just done in the last month is we're starting to switch our minivans, which were gas powered, into hybrids, so the gas electrics. And we're not sure how quickly we're going to be able to do that. I'm sure you've heard that the chips for the vehicles are very hard to get. A lot of our vendors in the state are saying that they're really struggling because they can't get those chips, so they can't do the vehicles. So we'll see what the delivery times are like. So expanding mobility choices. I talked about the Canvas program. The other things that we've helped with over the past is we were instrumental in getting the Confederated Salish Transit System started. I helped write the grants to get them state funding, help them write grants to get studies done on how to set it up. So we've been real involved up in Lake County. In the last couple of years, we helped reestablish the Seeley Lake Medical Transportation Program. We secured them a van from Great Falls Transit that had a lift. We let them use one of our spare fleet vehicles. And this last year, they were able, through help with Mr. TMA, to get 2 new vans from MDT. In Mineral County, we helped them establish a short notice medical transportation program, helped do a fundraising program for them so that they could buy 3 new minivans. They had an old Dodge van that was converted with a lift. They were like our old Vanpool vehicles. I'm still not sure how they did that, but it was a 2012 vehicle. We work with the Veterans Service Center down in Hamilton. We've let them use some of the vehicles that we would have normally sold off to transport veterans in the Bitterroot up to the clinic here. If they need to, they can take them over to Fort Harrison over in Helena, because there is no way other than DAV for them to get over there. The service center also said it's very important having those vans located there. They've got a counselor there, and many times veterans come in and they're suicidal. And he said we've probably saved at least 5 veterans' lives where they were able to just get them in a van and get them to medical facilities, rather than having to say, wait and let us see if we can find you a ride. We also have a voucher program that we run in Missoula, Lake, Sanders, Mineral County. And what that voucher program is for is it helps people with discharges. Community medical center is probably the biggest user of that. It helps them get people that have no way to leave the hospital or get to the hospital, those trips. It also, if somebody doesn't have the ability to get to a job interview, we will get them a ride, whether it's a cab or one of the public transit systems, to get to that interview. If they secure that job, we'll buy them a bus pass for 1 month so they can get a couple of paychecks under their belt before they have to start worrying about how they're going to get to work. We partner with, in our Guaranteed Ride Home program, we partner with Uber, Lyft, Yellow Cab, the Confederated Salish Transit, Polson Taxi, Bitterroot Bus, Huckleberry Express Taxi. We also help Bitterroot Bus figure out how to do dialysis transportation from the Bitterroot into the dialysis centers here in Missoula. The other thing that we're kind of interested in is we've talked to Mountain Line over the years about possibly doing urban van pools. These van pools would go into areas like Miller Creek, Patty Canyon, further up the Rattlesnake, where Mountain Line either physically can't go or just, doesn't have the ridership to do a full bus, or they would run in off hours when Mountain Line doesn't. One of the examples of that we've worked on is we were working with the Veterans Court. I guess a lot of them were employed by Daly's Meats, but they were doing graveyard shifts. So we offered to set up a van pool for them that could get them to those graveyard shifts. A lot of them didn't have driver's licenses, so that employment was really difficult for them to maintain. I'm also seeing a lot of articles questioning our reliance on ridership for all of our funding. So there's people out doing studies right now that are looking at addressing or evaluating access
That's the back here.
as a way to normalize that funding a little bit.
It's full.
And then I pulled this out of the long range transportation plan. I thought it was real interesting. It shows where the workers are coming into Missoula and going out of Missoula. And right before COVID hit, I thought it was real interesting. Our program kind of shifted to where the majority of vans were coming in to where half were coming in and half were going out. Our future plans with this is we've always worked with the job service. We're going to start making connections with the Chamber of Commerce, larger employers, trying to capture the workers that are illustrated on this plan. And in doing that, we've contracted with a media company that maintains all of our social media, our radio advertising, all of that kind of thing. And this is just kind of the money that we get from the federal government that we bring into Missoula. One of the things that helps us sell the Vanpool is AAA for commuting from Missoula or from Missoula to Hamilton or Hamilton to Missoula every 20 days a month. It would cost them $980 a month. Oh, sorry. It costs them more. It saves them that much. Monthly fare from Missoula to Hamilton is $144 a month. Designs for Health has said that this has been an enormous help in expanding their recruitment area, where they can, they've got people coming to work as far away as Thompson Falls that we run vans for. There's also the federal commuter tax credit that helps incentivize people to use public transportation. And I talked about the technology that we're using. I'm also participating in a national study that's looking at how we can, in the rural areas, implement all the micro transits, the technology that they use in the urban areas to offer more access to transportation choices. We're hoping that'll be done at the end of December. COVID kind of slowed the consultant down on that. So if anybody has any questions, I know I rambled through that pretty fast, but I figured you guys wanted to get out of here.
Thanks, Lynn. Appreciate that. Questions, comments from the committee? Anyone? Apparently you answered everyone's burning questions, Lynn.
That's amazing. I figured there'd be at least one.
So, well, let me ask one then, just to prime the pump here. So on the, you flashed up on one of the previous screens, the federal funding streams. What, could you say just a little bit more of what goes into those numbers?
Yeah, the vast majority of that number is 5311 rural transportation money. About the MPO gives us, I think it's about 98,000 now in CMAQ money. Over the years, MDT, when we were a pilot project, we've been funded with 5311F intercity money. Their thought was, since there is no intercity between Hamilton and Missoula, we could take the place of that. They funded us with Mackey money when we were first having some financial problems. Most of you haven't been around, but when I took over Mr. TMA, we had $1,100 in the checking account and we were $80,000 in debt. So the county, the city, the parking commission, MDT, they all worked with us, as did FTA, Region 8 office, worked with us to keep the program going. So I can tell you right now, we are debt free. We have money in the bank to get us through 4 months of operations without any hiccups. So we're in a lot better shape now than we were in the past. And again, that money fluctuates based on ridership. Although MDT has told the MTA providers, Montana Transit Association providers, that they aren't going to really consider COVID with our funding going forward, because they know that was an extraordinary situation and none of us would probably get funded.
Thanks.
Yeah.
One other question while folks are collecting their thoughts. So you mentioned the possibility of expanding into some of the, para-urban or the area immediately surrounding Missoula, like a Patty
Right.
Canyon or up to Rattlesnake.
Right.
And with that, would those also be volunteer drivers? Because you mentioned maybe someone needing to get to work on graveyard shift or whatnot. So how does that work?
We do recruit the drivers. Like I said, that's how to operate one of those big 12 passenger vans. It costs me about $8,500 a year, roughly, depending on how long the route is. So if I was having to pay a driver for that route, it'd probably be, let's see, $20 a day. That'd add about $4,800 to the cost of running that van. So, I mean, if we had other funding, we could certainly look at getting that driver. The way we incentivize the drivers is if they drive 2 full days for us, and that can either be like, say, Monday, Tuesday, or some people like to drive just the morning route, and others will do the evening route, feeling that they're more alert at those times. So those drivers get the whole week free. So basically our drivers commute for free. They don't have to pay a fare. GlaxoSmithKline and Designs for Health. GlaxoSmithKline was picking up 73% of the fare cost for their employees. Designs for Health picks up 100%.
Great. Thanks for that, Lynn. Other questions, comments? All right. Mierta, were you wanting to ask a question? I just saw you flash up on the top of my screen there. Yes.
I was just curious about the Missoula to Hamilton commute can save $980 per month.
Yep.
Could you expand on that a little bit? Is that per potential commuter, and what goes into that calculation?
That is per commuter. So it's figures the fuel that you're saving, the insurance savings. That's one of the things that we tell our Vanpool when you join the Vanpool, call your insurance company, because with that, those lower miles that you're driving, you can usually save on your insurance premiums. It goes into wear and tear, tires, preventive maintenance, lube oil filter, car payments. All of that is encompassed in that AAA estimate of what it costs, the actual cost. And most people, of course, when you talk to them, they just figure the money that they spend at the pump and they forget about the rest.
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks, Mierta. Other questions, other comments? Okay. Well, thanks for joining us, Lynn.
Thanks, Dave. Good to see you again.
Likewise. Come anytime.
All right.
Okay. And next will be our final new business item for today, and that is a review and recommendation that TPCC support a city-county TA grant application. So Charlie or John.
Hey, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We'll get right into this. Yeah, so we are presenting city and county transportation alternative grant submittals in hopes that you all will provide letters of support for each grant application. So a little background on Transportation Alternatives Program. It is a result of Surface Transportation Block Grant, a set-aside replacement to MAP 21. So it's a similar program that was pre-existing, but uses slightly different funds from my understanding. So there's two applications. There's capital improvement projects, which has available $5.5 million, as well as pavement preservation projects, which is just about $1 million. These applications are due beginning of June. So we have both city and county submittals. Our focus today are 3 projects. The first being Lolo School Sidewalk and Roadway improvements, which is coming through the county. Eaton Street pedestrian improvements, phase 1, which is coming through the city, and South Avenue connections and safety improvements, which is coming through the city. There's also potential for submittal through Parks and Recreation for a pavement preservation application that would be involved on local trail networks. So first, I'm going to go ahead and move you all's faces so I can get a better grasp on where things are on these slides. The first is Lolo School Sidewalk and Roadway improvement. So this involves installing sidewalks along Clark Drive / Farm Lane in Lolo, about a half mile. The funding request is approximately $1 million, which is about the maximum request that you can get. And this is an illustrative project on the draft Missoula Connect project list. The reasoning for this is they're moving 2 Lolo public schools, Missoula County Public Schools, out to towards Farm Lane. So this will be a combined school involving both the elementary and middle school. And that's where the red star is located on this map. So it'll be an essential safety connection for those students and families. Second project is Eaton Street pedestrian improvements. We've decided to go with a phased approach to this submittal. So the first phase that we are applying to is 7th Street to Mount Avenue and South 14th Street, but the entire project continues from 7th Street to South Avenue. There is currently $1.5 million of committed CIP funds to construct this project, but we would hope that we can get funding to help offset some of the costs. This is currently a project that is in our long-range transportation list. We have yet to determine the cost for this project, but we do know the elements that will be constructed. So we're going to be filling sidewalk gaps because there is not continuous sidewalk along this project, as well as including ADA fixtures at intersections, alleyway crossings, and driveways. And in phase 2, there will be an intersection redesign at Eaton Street and 14th Street / Mount Avenue intersection. And there will be continuous sidewalk from 7th Street down to South Avenue. So I think there's strong justification for this project. If you've ever walked this corridor or even driven it, you can tell that there's a lot of missing sidewalk. It's been identified within the 2018 pedestrian facilities master plan as being in what is defined as high needs category for pedestrian facilities. So that's there highlighted in the red oval. The first phase is a transit route. Also, the whole corridor is classified as local collector. So our best estimate right now for traffic volumes is around 2,000 cars a day. And again, this is a committed project in the draft Missoula Connect project list.
So to just give you a little more detail about these projects, we'll start with a little cross section of Eaton. And so the right-of-way varies along the corridor from 60 feet to 50 feet. So here's an example of what the complete street would look like with two driving lanes, and then in each direction, 7-foot boulevard and parking lane, and then a sidewalk. So pretty exciting to see what a full built out section would look like. Part of this corridor does have constraints. There's an irrigation canal along the corridor. There are slope constraints, which is demonstrated in this graphic. So in those instances, on-street parking will be eliminated, and there'll be a curbside sidewalk. And so even though the right-of-way is 60 feet in some areas, there are other constraints that will limit what the project can accomplish. So, but still maintaining that sidewalk connectivity. Where there are 50-foot easements, the boulevard will be eliminated to retain on-street parking on each side, and then a little wider sidewalk that would be curbside. These are some photos of the corridor. So you can see this top photo is a constrained area where curbside sidewalk was necessary, and then it goes back to a boulevard sidewalk, which is ideal. But for those types of constraints, that's an effective and cost-effective way to address that. Again, on the lower picture, you can see the irrigation ditch that runs along there. So most likely a curbside sidewalk would be installed there. This top photo is the before picture, and the bottom picture is after of a really great bridge that was just installed about 1.5 years ago along the corridor. So that's just a great example of what was there before and what's there now. And as Charlie mentioned, this is a transit route, so really important to maintain that connectivity. The next project that Charlie mentioned at the beginning was the South Avenue. So just a little background on that. This is a context map. Applications were submitted in 2015 and 2017 were unsuccessful. However, this time around, we have 60% design of the project that WGM Group has provided for the city engineering. So we're confident we have a lot more of the application figured out in detail to apply for this grant again. So the entire project element would be sidewalks, bike lanes, and shared use path improvements, and then crossings at Old Fort Road, Big Sky High School, and the new regional park. Just like Eaton and the Lolo project, this is part of the Missoula Connect project list. So that's why we're here asking for a letter of support for that. So the ask for this project for the application will be completing this shared use path on the south side of the street from Community Hospital down to Russell or Reserve. So there's another diagram, entire project, cross sections there along the bottom, and then the area we're focusing on in this application would be from here all the way to Reserve to create that connection. The shared use path currently ends here at that blue line, so it would be a really nice connection to make for folks in that area. You can see the proximity to the schools, community hospital, and the park there. And here again are just some photos. The top one is across the street from the police station or the fire station, where there's pretty insufficient bike and ped facilities. And then the lower picture is right at south and the street that goes to Big Sky High School. And then the lower picture, you can see there's a transit stop along this corridor. So that entire project will, once completed, will improve multimodal connectivity. So yeah, if there's anything you want us to touch back on or highlight more, let us know and have a discussion about it.
All right, thank you so much. And I'm assuming that the motion today would be to submit letters of support for all of these projects.
That is correct.
Okay. Debbie.
The projects look great and all make sense. I wondered about Eaton Street and the limitations with the irrigation ditches, and wondered if the irrigation companies, the owners of the ditches, had any appetite to go to a piped connection so that boulevards or sidewalks could be built on top of the irrigation ditches to allow for more space for transportation.
Great question.
Yeah, I don't know if either of us have the background to answer that question, but I don't, Aaron might. Also, if we don't have an answer to that today, we can discuss with Ben Weiss and Monty with city and maybe do something.
Well, what I will add to that is this summer there is going to be an RFP for the Eaton Street corridor. So engineering work is to be done, and the timing of that is it's a little bit. It's going to be after our application submittal, but just MDT's knowledge that engineering work is going to be done on that will be beneficial, and that's potentially on the table. I do know just from discussion with Monty, who's a key engineer and providing us with answers to a lot of our application questions, is that in general they've had good experiences working with the Missoula Ditch Company, Missoula Wall. My apologies there. But he said that utilities are not the largest concern with this project.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Debbie. Other questions? Comments? And I did not see attached to our packet any draft language for a letter of support. Was there something that I missed, Aaron?
I expected to be sending those to you after, but I can shoot those to you.
Okay.
Yep.
Other questions, comments, or a motion to lend our support to these projects for the TA grant applications?
I move.
Okay, Merita Becerra moved to submit support letters for these applications. Is there a second?
I'll second.
That was Shane Morrissey, seconded. Any further discussion on the motion to lend our support to these very good and deserving projects? Seeing none, let's go ahead and, Ben.
Hey, Dave, MDT will have to abstain from this vote, seeing that MDT is involved in the determination of which projects get funding. So,
Okay,
so just wanted to let you know we'll be abstaining.
thanks for that. Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's go ahead and vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And one abstention from MDT, represented by Ben today. Okay, that concludes all of our new business. For old business, it's not listed, but for those of you who might have forgotten, today is the 41st anniversary of the eruption of Mount St. Helens, and that brought with it some transportation challenges a few decades back. Anything else? Any other old business? Any announcements?
Yeah, Dave, I just wanted to make one brief announcement, or maybe put out there for thought for this committee, that as the city starts to and county and our community start to open up after COVID, brings up, at what point do we want to, or if we want to return to in-person meetings? I don't anticipate that happening next month, but I know that the city is working on setting up technology to have hybrid meetings in council chambers. And so if you all have any thoughts or feedback on how you would like that to roll out, we can continue chatting about it or let me know, but just wanted to put that idea out there that we can start to think about. I think, maybe middle, end of summer, or as those opportunities present themselves to potentially meet more in person in council chambers again. So yeah, just put that out there.
Yeah.
If there's any discussion or thoughts from the committee on how and
Sure. Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, I'll just open it up briefly. Any thoughts folks have now? I know the county will be shifting next month in June to hybrid meetings where we'll actually be doing our public meetings in person, but retain the option for folks to participate this way, which I think we're never going to get away from in the future, because it actually is a great way for all of us to enhance participation. But thoughts about this summer transitioning back to in-person meetings? Okay, you can sleep on it.
no decisions need to be made today. Like I said, I think we've got at least a month or two before it's, a possibility, but we'll make sure we do some polling or get some feedback before we decide on any course of action.
Thanks for planting the seed, Aaron. Appreciate that. Any other announcements? Okay, seeing none. Have a great day, everyone. We will be adjourned.
All right, thanks.
Goodbye.